Hey everyone, Mr. Skelton here. Back at it here with lesson 2 in our second unit in geometry. And when you first take a look at these notes, you're going to notice that there are no shapes. You're not calculating anything. There's no algebra. It's going to look a lot like an English class. It's going to feel like an English class. And that's because today we're going to start to talk about thinking and how you think and logically thinking through things. And so we're going to be looking at some different statements and going through them and trying to figure out, what part is the hypothesis, what part is the conclusion. You're going to hear words like conditional statement, the converse, inverse, contrapositive. And I know it's going to seem overwhelming, and when you look at this stuff, it's going to look like it's out of control. But with some repetition, I think you'll pick up on it. It's really not too bad once you get going. Okay? It just takes a lot of practice and a lot of getting used to. So if you need to rewatch this video a couple times, feel free to, or rewatch certain parts. I'd suggest you do that. Okay? All right. So we're going to talk about these key concepts, which are, the first thing is a conditional statement. And a conditional statement is right here. It's just an if-then statement. And we use these all the time, every day in life. For example, if it's Friday, then in the cafeteria they're serving the cinnamon rolls. Or if it's sunny outside, then I need to wear sunscreen. We use these all the time in life, and those are called conditional statements. And everything we do today is going to kind of spin off of a conditional statement. Now, I'm going to use colored pens, so I have my blue and my red so that I can kind of use the colors that are in your notes. Okay? So with a conditional statement, we have what's called the if part and then the then part. And we use the symbols P and Q. Now, I don't know why mathematicians decided to use P and Q, but that's just the way it is. So here's the first thing you need to understand. The hypothesis, which is our P. So hypothesis is the P. That follows the word if. Does not include the word if, but it follows. Okay? The conclusion is your Q, and that follows the word then. So we can read it as like this: if P, then Q, or P implies Q. That's how we can say it. All right, so now you know the parts, hypothesis and conclusion. Let's kind of put it into practice here with some examples. Okay? Get this straightened out here for you. There we go. All right, so the directions. Circle the hypothesis and underline the conclusion. So the first thing I'm going to do is hypothesis. I'm going to circle in the directions my red, and I'm going to underline in blue my conclusion. I'm going to try to keep color coordinated. If you have blue and red, this may be very helpful for you. Number one, if it's sunny out. So the hypothesis is that it's sunny out. The conclusion, we will all go swimming. Remember, when they're asking you for the hypothesis, do not include the word if. It's what follows the word if. The conclusion is what follows the word then. So we do not underline the word then, we underline what comes after it. So this would be our P, and this would be our Q. If P, then Q. If P, then Q. That is a conditional statement. Okay? So number two, if a figure is a segment, so the hypothesis would be a figure is a segment, P, then it has two endpoints, so it has two endpoints would be your Q. There's your if P, then Q. Go ahead and hit pause and try the ones right over here, numbers 1 and 2, and see if you did it correctly. All right, we're back at it. If it's cold outside, so it is cold outside. Do not circle if. That's your P. Then it is winter. Underline it as winter. That's your Q. If an angle measures 135 degrees, so all of that is your P. Then it is obtuse. That is your Q. Okay? Moving on, towards the bottom. Towards the bottom, I'm asking you to actually write a conditional statement based off of the information. So I'm going to use just regular. Actually, I'll do this. I'll keep my markers going here, or my pens. Write the following statement as a conditional. All dolphins are mammals. Now, first thing, there are a lot of different ways to write this, and the way I write it may not be exactly how you write it, and that's totally fine, okay? So let me show you an example. All dolphins are mammals. If something is a dolphin, then it is a mammal. Okay? Perfect. Number 2, water freezes at a temperature below 32 degrees. If water freezes, then the temperature is below 32 degrees. And I'm writing fast and it's chicken scratch. You can barely read it, but you get the point. Okay? Go ahead and hit pause. Try the ones on the right next to it, and then check back with me. All right, back. An even number is divisible by 2 if a number, if an even number is divisible by 2. If a number is even, then it is divisible by 2. An angle of 90 is right. If an angle is 90, then it is a right angle. Sweet. Moving on. Page 2. All right. This gets a little crazier. And what I'm going to ask you to do is you're going to have to put some studying time into this box right here. Okay? We have 4 types of statements that you need to know, within a few days here. Conditional. We just spent time talking about the conditional statement. That's your hypothesis, conclusion, P then Q. If P then Q. Now we're going to talk about the next 3. The next 3 are as follows. You have the converse, you have the inverse, and you have what's called the contrapositive. Okay? Now a lot of students, instead of reading this part, the how to write, they look at the symbols. And it usually makes a little bit more sense for them, and then they go right to how to read it. They go from symbols to the read it, and they can kind of figure out. So basically what you're doing here, envision this. What you're going to do is take your P and your Q, and you're basically just going to arrange your hypothesis and conclusion in different ways while still writing if-then statements. You can see right here, if, then, if, then, if, then, if, then. Now there's some knots in there, and we'll talk about that in a second. But basically what you're doing is taking puzzle pieces and just rearranging them to fit the definitions of the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. Okay? I'll show you how it works. So, the directions here for these next examples ask you to write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. And I'm going to keep using my red and blue pens to use the P and Q. Right now I'm using my P, or my hypothesis, as my red, and my conclusion is in blue. And you can see that right there and right there. So here we go. Here's your conditional statement. So I should probably write above that. This is your conditional. That's what we start with. Okay, so this right here is your conditional statement. All right. What I like to do is identify my P, identify my Q in my original conditional statement, and now I'm going to rearrange. I do my chores and I can save more money based on the definitions right here. Converse. Look at the converse. Converse, you just exchange or switch the Q and the P. So let's do that. If I can save more money, then I do my chores. I just switch my Q and my P. That's your converse. Inverse. Inverse is where you negate. Okay, this symbol right here stands for negate or not. So you would read this as if not P, then not Q. So it's kind of like your conditional in terms of it's P first and Q, but you're negating both. So look at your original. It would read like this. If I don't do my chores, then I can't save more money. And again, you may put in little transitional words like you may say, if I do not do my chores, or something similar. It doesn't have to be exactly like what I have, okay? Now, contrapositive. Contrapositive is right here. And this is where you switch your hypothesis and conclusion and negate both of them. So I'm going to look at my Q and then P, but I'm negate them. So here's what your contrapositive looks like. If I can't save more money, then I didn't do my chores. Okay? All right, go ahead and hit pause. Try the ones on the right-hand side here. You're writing the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. This right here is your conditional statement. Go from there. All right, back at it. So here's your conditional statement. I should probably write that. Conditional. I'm going to identify my hypothesis. There's my P. Here's my Q. And now I'm going to write the following statements. First one, converse. I'm switching my Q and my P. So here we go. If you are a Spartan, then you attend Homestead High. I can't even read that. Part B, inverse. Inverse is where you negate the hypothesis and conclusion. If you don't attend Homestead High, then you are not a Spartan. That's the inverse. Last one, contrapositive. You're negating both and switching your Q and P. If you are not a Spartan, then you don't or do not attend Homestead High. Okay? Put some time into learning these four. Put some time into understanding the symbols. Put some time into how you read those symbols. And most importantly, please understand that the hypothesis is your P, and your conclusion in blue pen, in blue, is your Q. It's a puzzle, just moving things around. Okay? Now, next at the bottom, you may have started to figure out that when you read these statements, that some of them don't seem to make sense. They're not true, right? Now, some of them are true, but some of them you're like, nah, that doesn't quite make sense. Like this one, that was up here, for example. If you are a Spartan, then you attend Homestead High School. Well, that doesn't really make sense because there are a lot of other schools across the country that have a Spartan for a mascot. So just because you attend Homestead doesn't, just because you're a Spartan doesn't mean you go to Homestead. You could be a Spartan and go to Michigan State University. They're the Spartans, right? So that's what we're going to talk about next in these truth values, okay? When you have truth values, if you think something is false, you need to give what's called a counter example, all right? That's a word that you'll see a lot in your homework, quizzes, and tests. And that's an example like I just said. If you are a Spartan, then you go to Homestead. Well, that's false because I'm a Spartan and I go to Michigan State University. That's a perfect counterexample. You just need one to prove something false, okay? So let's go through these and answer these questions. It says, is the conditional statement true or false? If false, give me an example. If it is Monday, then we go to school. False. Why? Well, Labor Day is coming up, and Labor Day is on a Monday, and you're not in school. So you could say Labor Day. Number 2, if I eat blueberries, then I'm eating fruit. That is true. I think blueberries are a fruit. If I'm eating blueberries, and blueberries only, then I'm eating a fruit. That is true. Okay? Go ahead and hit pause. Try the ones at the right. All right. If school is in session, then it is a weekday. Now, some of these are debatable. And I like to have a lot of fun with kids, and kids usually like to test me and try to make up every reason to find it to be false. So here's a perfect situation. If school is in session, then it is a weekday. On a normal school calendar, this would be true. But some students may say false, and they would say Saturday school. All right. Now, I don't even know if Homestead does Saturday school, but I know there are some other schools that have Saturday school, right? And so if school is in session, then it is a weekday, false, Saturday school. If you said true and argued, well, we're talking about a traditional school schedule, I would be cool with that too. Number 2, if I'm eating a fruit, then I'm eating an apple. Of course, that's false. If you're eating a fruit, then you're eating an apple, false. You could be eating an orange, right? You could be eating a grapefruit. You could be eating grapes. You could be doing a lot of different things with fruits. Hey, last page. So now what we're going to do is combine what we did on that last page. We're going to write the statements from a conditional statement, write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive, and determine whether it's true or false. Now, I gave you a big helpful hint at the bottom of your notes in terms of truth values. Your conditional and contrapositive always have the same truth value. What that means is, if your conditional is true, then your contrapositive is true. If your conditional is false, then your contrapositive has to be false. Likewise, your converse and inverse have the same truth value. If your converse is true, your inverse is true. If your converse is false, your inverse is false. That's helpful because some of these that you do up here get a little confusing when you read them to figure out truth statements. Okay, let's do number 1. I'm going to identify, this is your conditional. All right, that's where we're starting, your conditional statement, and I'm going to identify my hypothesis, which is my P, and my conclusion, which is my Q. If I'm eating a carrot, then I'm eating a vegetable. Is that true or false for my conditional? If I'm eating a carrot, then I'm eating a vegetable. That is true. I'm actually going to put a T right here. I didn't put a space for that, but I'm going to kind of put T for true. Now, just based off this bottom part here, I know that my contrapositive has to be true because they share the same truth value. Okay? Let's write some stuff in here. First, converse. Converse is A. If I'm eating a veggie, then I'm eating a carrot. Now think about that. If I'm eating a vegetable, then it has to be a carrot. That is false. You always have to prove a counterexample. Cucumber. I like cucumbers. All right. Now, again, down at the bottom, my truth values for my converse and inverse have to be the same. So if this was my converse, this is my inverse statement, I know they have to be the same. Now let's write in our inverse. Do you remember what your inverse is? If you forgot how to write your inverse, go back to here, look at your inverse. Here's what you have to write. You have to negate your hypothesis and negate your conclusion. So come back here. If I'm not eating a carrot, then I'm not eating a veggie. Now that's tough to think about. If I'm not eating a carrot, so you could be eating anything else, then I'm not eating a vegetable. Well, you could say false. You could say cucumber again, right? If I'm not eating a carrot, that means I'm eating a cucumber or any other thing. Then I'm not eating a veggie. Well, a cucumber is a vegetable, so that's false. Okay. Last one is the contrapositive. Okay. Contrapositive. So again, if you forgot contrapositive, flip back over, look at contrapositive, see what you have to do. You have to negate your conclusion and then negate your hypothesis. Looks like this. If I'm not eating a veggie, then I'm not eating a carrot. I'll just read that, slow down. If I'm not eating a veggie, so you're not eating vegetables, so you're eating Captain Crunch, then I'm not eating a carrot. That's true. Can't be eating a carrot because that would be considered a vegetable, so that is true. So some of these get tough. That's why this here at the bottom, your truth values, usually your conditional, you can figure out whether it's true or false right away. And the same thing with your converse. Those are usually the easier ones. When you start doing the conditional and the inverse. Sorry, I'm keep going backwards. Let me go back to this. Your conditional and converse are usually the easier ones to figure out whether something's true or false. When you get into the inverse and contrapositive, where you're having to say like if not something, then not something, those get tougher to kind of play in your head and play through those scenarios, okay? There is a question on the right, and this is, I'm just going to read these to you. So I want you to hit pause. I want you to do this problem, and then I'm just going to read these to you, and we'll go from there. All right, we're back. Last thing here. This is your conditional. This is your P. Oops. This is your P. This is your Q. So for number 1, which is the converse, it should read this. If it is summer, then it is July. True or false? If it is summer, then it's July. That's false. Because it could be June, right? And that's still summer. Let's go back to our conditional. If it's July, then it's summer. That is true. If you're in the month of July, then it is summertime. That is true. Converse, if it is summer, then it's July. False, could be June, could be August, right? You only need one. Okay, inverse. Inverse. If it's not July, then it's not summer. Now, if this is false, your converse, you know the converse and inverse are the same. So that's false. Contrapositive, I'm just reading it to you. If it's not summer, then it is not July. That is true. Again, your contrapositive and your conditional have the same truth value. True for your conditional, true for your contrapositive. False for your converse, false for your inverse. Okay? Now, the one thing that I want to make sure I hammer home to you is that no matter how you're switching things around with your hypothesis and conclusion, your conditional, your converse, your inverse, and your contrapositive always start with the word if, and somewhere in the middle transition to then. So these are always if-then statements. We're just rearranging our P and our Q, or our hypothesis and conclusion. Okay? So give it a try. I know this is a longer notes session, but I think hopefully with the colors and the detail of the notes should be helpful to you. All right? So we'll talk about it more in class, and more practice you do, the better you'll get. All right, gang, take care. We'll see you later.